The moment I stepped into the Monarch Hotel ballroom, I felt every pair of eyes brush past me like I wasn't even there. Sloane Whitmore, my brother's perfect fiancée, leaned toward her bridesmaids, a glass of champagne in her manicured hand, and whispered just loud enough for me to hear. "Oh, great. The Stinky country girl is here." Her friends erupted in high-pitched giggles that made my skin crawl. Sloane didn't even glance at me when she said it. I was invisible to her. A blemish in her carefully constructed world. The irony that I owned every inch of this space, the chandeliers, the Italian marble, the expensive silverware, made the corners of my lips twitch. Let her think she's untouchable. Let them all think I'm nothing. I was Bethany Burns. 31. A girl from Millbrook, Pennsylvania. A town so small that our biggest traffic jam involved Mr. Henderson's cows blocking Main Street for hours. I left home at 18, not because I hated it, but because my family made it clear I didn't belong. My brother Garrett, the golden child, could do no wrong. My brother, Patricia, always looked at me like a rough draft, unfinished, imperfect, while Garrett was the masterpiece. So, I left with 200, a single suitcase, and the stubborn refusal to fail. The world I entered wasn't forgiving. I started as a cleaning lady at a boutique hotel, scrubbing flonans, taking orders with a polite smile. But I watched, I learned, I absorbed every detail. I worked my way up front desk, assistant manager. I saved every penny, made smart investments, and by 30 I owned 3 properties. By 31, I ran Birch Hospitality, a company with 6 boutique hotels across the East Coast, the Monarch my flagship. I never told my family. They still thought I was struggling in a tiny apartment somewhere, living off instant noodles. And now here I was, in the ballroom I owned, wearing jeans and boots that probably cost more than Sloane's entire wardrobe, letting her underestimate me. The stench of arrogance hung around her like perfume. But it was fleeting. By the end of this night, she would learn what it really meant to step on someone she thought she could crush. My mother approached, the way a cat would sniff at a puddle of water, cautiously and with suspicion. "It's nice you could make it," she said, her tone anything but nice. She disapproved of my boots, my casual outfit, my very presence. She reminded me to impress the Whitmores, her refined vocabulary dripping with judgment. I nodded, said I came straight from work, which was true, just not in the way she imagined. I was running my empire today, she didn't need to know. Across the room, Sloane floated, kissing cheeks, smiling like a queen. Her parents, Franklin and Delilah Whitmore, were draped in jewels and pride, acting wealthy, moving wealthy, thinking everyone else was blind to their desperation. Garrett, my brother, looked as adoring as ever, unaware of the storm about to hit. Then my stomach sank. Grandma's necklace. The antique pendant she had promised me. The one she said was for her dreamer, her fighter, her country girl. My mother, in her infinite tact, had given as an engagement gift. It sparkled around her neck. Mocking me, a symbol of my family's continued oversight. I excused myself, needing air, and stumbled upon Franklin Moore in the hallway, phone pressed to his ear. Tension carved into his features. I caught fragments. They needed the wedding to happen. The Burns family had money enough to cover their situation. Their situation. What did he mean? And then it clicked. For 4 years, I had been sending my family anonymously. Mortgage payments, medical bills, utilities. All from Birch Hospitality. All from me. My mother had assumed it was Garrett. And now the Whitmores were playing a con, aiming at the wrong family entirely. They had thought they were marrying into wealth to shore up their failing empire. They had no idea. I found Wesley Crane, my general manager, near the service entrance. He didn't flinch when I asked him to pull background information on the Whitmores. No questions. Just nods. That was why I trusted him. Naomi Delaney, forensic accountant extraordinaire, confirmed what I suspected. Franklin and Delilah weren't waffy, they were criminals. Running a Ponzi scheme across multiple states. Sloan wasn't Sloan, she was Sandra Williams. Years of deception, identities, lies all collapsing tonight. I returned to the party, my presence unnoticed, watching Sloan flirt and glide. She found me eventually, sweetly suggesting we talk. Her smile was a blade. Her words, venom disguised as concern. Accused me of sending money for approval, being jealous of Garrett, a pathetic nobody. She thought she knew me. She didn't. Wesley handed me a folder, shaking slightly, confirming every suspicion. Court filings, financial statements, news clippings, all evidence of years of fraud. Agent Carla Reeves and her team were already on their way. The trap was set. As Franklin Whitmore began his toast, I gave Wesley the signal. Screens flickered, happy photo of Garrett and Sloan replaced with court documents. Financial records, news articles exposing the truth. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Franklin's face drained of color. Sloan's mask shattered. My brother's eyes widened as realization dawned. I walked forward, commanding attention without asking for it. Wesley introduced me, owner of the Monarch Hotel, CEO of Birch Hospitality. Gasps, disbelief, shock, perfect. I revealed the truth. Fraud, fake identities, years of lies. Sloan screamed, trying to save herself, calling me a jealous nobody. I smiled. Agent Reeves and her team entered, handcuffs ready. Franklin tried to flee. Delilah cried. Sloan, Sandra, whoever she would be next, lunged at me, caught by security. I whispered, only she could hear. The stinky country girl owned the room, paid everyone around her, slept knowing exactly who she was. The ballroom emptied, stunned and awed. Garrett came to me, voice trembling, asking how I knew. I said I listened. I watched, I paid attention. He apologized for years of ignorance. My mother stared at the screen as I revealed the anonymous payments, finally seeing me. Tears, real ones, for the first time. Garrett handed me Grandma's necklace. Rightful again. Weeks later, the Whitmores were in custody. News headlines called me the stinky country girl who owned the room. I framed it in my office, smiling every morning at the irony. Garrett visited, astonished at the life I had built. My mother started therapy. We were rebuilding, finally, honestly, slowly. I hosted a scholarship breakfast for a young woman named Nicole Patterson. A reminder that the country girl who started with nothing could give others everything. As she smiled, overwhelmed but determined, I watched guests walk on floors I owned, sleep in beds I paid for, and realize it didn't matter if they knew me. I knew myself. And that was more than enough. People will always underestimate you. While they look down, you rise up. I had learned that lesson in Millbrook, Pennsylvania, carrying it through years of struggle and doubt. Now, here I was standing tall, surrounded by everything I gill. The stinky country girl. She smelled success coming from a mile. The weeks that followed the Monarch Hotel incident were a whirlwind. Newspapers, online articles, and late-night talk shows called me the country girl who owned the room. Sloan. No, Sandra was behind bars. Her parents had vanished in court proceedings, though their trail was being tracked. My phone rang constantly, emails piled up. Investors wanted meetings, journalists wanted interviews. Yet through it all, I stayed rooted in the quiet confidence of knowing exactly who I was. Garrett visited first. His face was a mixture of awe, guilt, and confusion. Bethany, I had no idea, he said, voice barely above a whisper, as he fidgeted with a coaster on my desk. Mom she never told me any of this. I thought you were struggling. I leaned back, folding my hands. I wasn't struggling, Garrett. I was building. You were living in a fantasy that everything you touched was gold. I was the one actually making it happen. He flinched, then laughed nervously. So, you really were the one sending money all these years? Yes. I said, letting the word linger. Not for gratitude, not for recognition. Because family should never be left behind. And apparently, Mom and you needed reminding. He nodded slowly, shame and admiration wrestling in his eyes. I am sorry. Sorry doesn't fix 10 years of ignorance, I said. Then softer, but we can start again. If you're ready. My mother's apology came later. It wasn't immediate, not the tearful, cinematic kind you see in movies. She was stubborn, bruised by ego and embarrassment. I didn't realize, she said, sitting stiffly in my office, her hands folded tightly. I thought I was doing what was best for you, for Garrett. You were doing what was best for yourself, I replied, letting the words land like bricks. But that's fine. We'll figure this out, slowly. Reconciliation wouldn't be instant, but it was possible. I could see cracks in her armor, glimpses of humility peeking through. That was enough for me. Meanwhile, Birch hospitality expanded rapidly. Investors flocked to me, eager to back a woman who had turned small beginnings into a regional empire. I hired young women like Nicole Patterson, girls who reminded me of myself at 18, determined, underestimated, and willing to grind for a dream. I mentored them personally, watching their confidence blossom. Every success of theirs felt like a victory for the little girl, who grew up with no one believing in her. Yet not everything was smooth. Sandra's case dragged, revealing layers of deception I hadn't anticipated. She had accomplices in the Whitmore network, some of whom had fled internationally. I worked with Agent Reeves, tracing funds, exposing more fraudulent activity. Every layer of deceit we uncovered felt like peeling back the last 10 years of lies, exposing the truth to the world. One evening, Garrett stopped by my penthouse, looking unusually contemplative. Bethany, do you ever regret leaving Millbrook? Leaving all of it behind. I sipped my tea, gazing out at the city lights. No, Millbrook made me, but it didn't define me. I had to leave to see what I was truly capable of. And every time I doubted myself, every time I was told I couldn't, I reminded myself country girls can own rooms too. He chuckled. You always had a way with words. I'd actions, I added, smirking. Words are cheap. Actions, they leave a mark. We fell into a comfortable silence. For once, Garrett didn't compete with me. Didn't try to overshadow me. He simply sat, learning to respect the sister he had underestimated for years. That moment, quiet and unspoken, meant more than any courtroom victory, any business deal, any media headline. Months passed. Birch Hospitality became a household name. The Monarch Hotel held gala events, conferences, and charity fundraisers. I was invited to panels, interviewed on television, recognized as a leading entrepreneur. And yet, through all the fame, the power, the influence, I stayed grounded. I remembered Millbrook, remembered the nights I slept in a tiny apartment counting pennies. Remembered the sting of judgment from family who didn't see my worth. One day, Naomi Delaney, my accountant and friend, came rushing in with a grin. Bethany, you're not going to believe this. Another investor just transferred $5 million into Birch Hospitality. They want a joint venture with you internationally. They know your story. They're inspired by it. I laughed genuinely, the kind of laugh that comes from relief and triumph intertwined. $5 million, huh? And here I thought I'd have to sell Grandma's necklace to fund the expansion. Naomi shook her head. Nope, you've officially gone global. I leaned back in my chair, closing my eyes for a moment. The girl from Millbrook, overlooked, underestimated, mocked, was now being recognized for exactly what she was. Powerful. Brilliant. Fearless. And yet, the most important victory wasn't in the headlines or the bank statements. It was in the family I rebuilt, the young women I mentored, the people I helped, the truth I upheld. The stinky country girl had not only owned the room, she had owned her life. Weeks later, Garrett walked into my office, holding a gift-wrapped box. "Bethany, this is for you. From Mom and me." I raised an eyebrow, curiosity tinged with caution. He handed it over. Inside was Grandma's pendant, now safely in my possession. And a letter. My mother had written it herself. She admitted her mistakes, her blindness, and most importantly, she acknowledged me. Not just as the successful woman she had once doubted, but as her daughter, her equal, her family. I hugged Garrett and then Mom, tears stinging my eyes. "It's about time," I whispered. "About time you saw me." From that day, nothing could shake me. I had faced betrayal, ignorance, and deception, yet emerged stronger. I had exposed lies that spanned a decade, reclaimed my family, built an empire, and inspired countless others. And I did it all as Bethany Burns. The country girl who owned the room. The woman who would never be underestimated again. The months after the Whitmore scandal became a turning point for Birch hospitality. Expansion talks that had once seemed distant dreams became urgent reality. Investors were no longer skeptical, they were inspired. They didn't just see the hotels. They saw the woman who had built them, brick by brick, out of nothing. Garrett visited more often now, no longer the distant, oblivious brother, but a partner in conversation. A sounding board. "You've really changed everything," he said one afternoon as we walked for the Monarch's rooftop garden. "Not just the business, the way we see each other. The way we see Mom. You've reshaped everything." I smiled faintly. I didn't change everything. I just didn't let their ignorance define me anymore. "You and Mom, you just had to catch up." He laughed, a bit awkwardly. "Yeah, I'm trying." We walked in silence for a moment, watching the skyline glow as the sun dipped behind it. "Bethany, have you ever thought about slowing down? Or taking a break?" I shook my head. Slowing down isn't really my style. But I do take moments to breathe like this one. Garrett nodded, understanding. There was no envy in his voice anymore. No comparisons. Just respect. That alone felt revolutionary. My attention was pulled back to business when Nami Delaney burst into the room, excitement practically radiating off her. "Bethany, you have to see this." I raised an eyebrow. "What is it now?" "A joint venture opportunity in London. A new boutique hotel opening, they want you to manage it. They've heard your story, the Whitmore exposure, the way you handled the entire situation, they want that leadership." I took a deep breath. International expansion. Not bad for a girl from Millbrook. Naomi grinned. Not bad at all. The thought of stepping onto a global stage thrilled me. It wasn't just about hotels or money. It was about influence, about showing the world that someone underestimated could become unstoppable. Yet amidst the professional triumph, I had to navigate personal complexities. My mother, Patricia, was attending therapy weekly, slowly confronting her own shortcomings. Garrett had become more present in the family, reconnecting with distant relatives, learning what it meant to genuinely care. I, meanwhile, balanced the excitement of expansion with mentoring young women, like Nicole Patterson, ensuring that opportunity, not luck, would define their future. One evening, Garrett and I sat in the Monarch's executive lounge overlooking the city lights. "Bethany," he said carefully, "do you ever regret what happened with the Whitmores? Exposing them, the confrontation at the engagement party, did it feel too much?" I leaned back, considering. It wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. They could have destroyed our family, our reputation, even my brother's future. I gave them exactly what they earned. And yes, I did it in style, but style doesn't make it wrong. He nodded slowly. I guess I just want you to know I've learned a lot watching you handle everything. I'm proud of you, Bethany. The weight of that acknowledgement settled differently than I expected. It wasn't just pride, it was validation. The recognition that the invisible sister had always existed, even if no one else saw her. As Birch hospitality grew internationally, I found myself juggling more than just hotels. I became an inadvertent celebrity, a symbol for underdogs everywhere. Media outlets wanted interviews, motivational speaking engagements, keynote addresses at conferences. Yet, no matter how busy I became, I never lost the lessons Millbrook taught me: humility, patience, and the quiet strength of persistence. I spent a week in London, overseeing the launch of the boutique hotel. Walking through the grand lobby, I smiled at the familiar thrill of creating spaces that felt alive, personal, luxurious yet approachable. Staff greeted me with genuine warmth, respect earned from years of mentoring, and the understanding that this wasn't just a workplace. It was a vision realized. Back home, Garrett continued his growth. He started his own business ventures, inspired not just by my success but by my approach: calculated risks, attention to detail, ethical leadership. Mom occasionally called update me on therapy sessions. Progress small but steady. Tears of regret softened by words of acknowledgement. The most profound realization came one evening, when I was mentoring Nicole Patterson. She was doubting herself, worried she wasn't ready for the challenges ahead. I don't know if I can do it, she admitted, eyes downcast. I placed a hand on her shoulder. Nicole, the people who look down on you, who tell you can't, they don't define you. Your worth isn't measured by their perception. It's measured by your persistence, your courage, your willingness to rise. Never let anyone make you small, because when you finally stand, they won't even see it coming. Her eyes lit with understanding. The kind of spark that reminded me of myself at 18. Thank you, I won't forget that. You won't, I said. And neither will the world. Once you show them what you're capable of. Months rolled into a year. Birch Hospitality's growth became unstoppable. My story was shared in business magazines, motivational podcasts, even university lecture halls. Yet the most meaningful victories were quiet moments with Garrett, my mother, the young women I mentored, and the realization that I had built not just wealth, but legacy, respect, and truth. Then came the final act of closure. Sandra Williams, previously Sloan Whitmore, was tried and convicted on multiple counts of fraud and conspiracy. The sentence was long, and restitution impossible, and the network she had built, completely dismantled. Justice had been served, and more importantly, no one in my family had been hurt beyond recognition. I stood in the Monarch Hotel lobby one evening, looking at the city lights reflecting off the marble floors. My grandmother's necklace rested in a case on my desk, a symbol of resilience, persistence, and rightful inheritance. Not of wealth, but of legacy. The girl from Millbrook had not only survived the dab, the con artists, and the family misunderstandings, she had thrived. A knock at the door brought Garrett into the room. Bethany, the investors called. They want another meeting tomorrow morning. International plans, potential partnerships. I laughed softly, shaking my head. Garrett, sometimes I think we've both finally realized who's really steering the ship. He grinned sheepishly. Yeah, I'm learning from the best. I looked around my office, the city skyline before me, the hotel empire behind me, and the future stretching out endlessly. Then let's make sure the world knows that country girls aren't just surviving, they're thriving. And nobody, absolutely nobody, gets to underestimate us ever again. Garrett smiled, truly smiled for the first time in years. And for the first time in years, I felt entirely at peace. I had confronted lies, exposed fraud, reclaimed my family, expanded my empire, and inspired others to believe in themselves. I was Bethany Burns, the country girl who owned the room, the empire, and the truth. And in that moment, I knew. This was only the beginning. The next morning, the boardroom was buzzing. Investors, advisors, and potential partners from Europe and Asia had flown in. The tension was palpable, but I thrived in it. My entrance silenced murmurs immediately. Every eye turned to the country girl who had rewritten the rules. "Good morning," I said, my voice steady, carrying authority yet warmth. "I'll keep this brief. Birch Hospitality doesn't just build hotels. We build experiences, communities, and legacies. And now, we want to take that vision worldwide." Charts and projections rolled across the screen. Financial forecasts, expansion strategies, staffing plans, partnerships. They were all meticulous. Every detail I had honed over years of scrappy beginnings in Millbrook. Investors leaned in, captivated. I wasn't just pitching numbers, I was pitching trust, vision, and integrity. One executive, a stern man from London, raised an eyebrow. "Ms. Burns. Impressive figures. But why should we believe you can replicate this success abroad? Domestic markets are one thing, but Europe is different." I leaned forward, letting my eyes meet his. "Because I've faced more than numbers. I've faced deceit, betrayal, and a family on the brink of collapse. I've rebuilt from scratch. And if you think markets are challenging, let me assure you, the people who break you are far more dangerous than any economic downturn. I know how to survive, and how to thrive." A subtle murmur of approval swept the room. It wasn't arrogance that carried my words, it was proof, hard-earned and undeniable. Later that evening, I found a rare quiet moment on the Monarch's rooftop. The skyline glimmered like scattered diamonds, the city alive below me. Garrett joined me, carrying 2 glasses of sparkling water. "You know," he said, leaning against the railing, "I never realized how much courage it takes to walk the path you did. All those years. The lies, the schemes, you faced them head on." I sipped my water, letting the lingering adrenaline. "Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite it. You grow strong by proving you won't be intimidated." He nodded, then hesitated. "Do you ever wish it had been different? That things weren't so complicated with Mom, the Whitmores, that maybe life had been easier?" I thought about that, about the small, dusty farm in Millbrook where I'd spent my childhood dreaming of bigger worlds. No, all of it shaped me. Without it, I wouldn't be standing here. I wouldn't know the value of truth, or the power of standing up for yourself. Easy isn't always better, sometimes it's just boring. Garrett laughed softly. "You've always had a way with words, and with showing people what they can't ignore." I smiled, letting the city lights mirror my satisfaction. "And sometimes, that's enough." Over the next months, Birch Hospitality's international expansion gained momentum. London, Paris, and Tokyo were next. Each hotel was designed to be a blend of local culture and the signature warmth I demanded. Staff